All right, so let's get started. And to the attendees who have been watching all of this happening, thank you so much for your patience as we work through these technical difficulties. So I just want to say good afternoon and welcome to another Fireside Chat with Personal Office Furniture. We would like to thank all of you, like I said, for attending our Fireside Chats and for joining us today. We have an amazing conversation that's going to happen today with some awesome people. Today, our Fireside Chat is all about labs and life sciences, the future of business. You will hear from industry professionals in design, architecture, and education. You'll hear what they have to say about labs and life sciences in Philadelphia. The chat will run for about 45 to 50 minutes, leaving about 10 minutes at the end to answer some of your questions if time allows. If you have questions for our panelists, please post them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them answer as many as we can. Now I would like to introduce our panel. Do not pay attention to the names below. Our technical difficulties has put us here. There's Lisa right there. Awesome, everybody's here.
We have a full house.
We have a full house. So I'm going to introduce you to our panelists and give them about a minute to tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do and where they do it. And we are going to kick that off with Steve Nappy, who is the Associate Vice President of Technology, Commercialization, and Business Development at Temple University. Steve, take it away.
Great, thank you. And I'm showing up in full force here with a new Steve Nappy showing up. I'm with Temple University, a Tier 1 comprehensive research institution with over 40,000 students across 6 Pennsylvania campuses, plus international campuses in Rome and Japan. Specifically, I sit within the Office of the Vice President for Research at the intersection of research-based discoveries and the businesses that work with us to advance those discoveries. Those businesses can be existing businesses, but in many cases, a key mechanism for us is the formation of a new business that's dedicated to the advancement of new technology. So we have about 25 active startups in our startup portfolio that just last year attracted about $47 million in funding. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Then we'll go to Carl E. Holden. He's a partner at Arcus Design Group Architects, Inc. Carl?
Yes, hi. As Kay mentioned, my name is Carl Holden. I'm one of the founding partners with Arcus Design Group. We're an architecture, interior design, and land planning firm. We were founded in 1987. We do a combination of commercial and residential work. Commercial architecture includes office, hospitality, healthcare, science and technology, and we've been working in medical marijuana also. My particular focus has been in the life science industry, designing research and development labs, production facilities and vivariums for pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, biotechnology companies, mostly in the Pennsylvania and New Jersey area.
Okay, thank you, Carl. And then we'll go to Lisa Berger Baskin, Senior Vice President at Shear Partners. Lisa?
I would like to say, will the real Steve Nappy please stand up? We had a little bit of difficulty here, so, but yeah, I am Lisa, and I have been in the commercial real estate industry for a little bit over 30 years now. Shear Partners, I joined them this past August, and it has been the best move of my career. Shear Partners has been in the life science real estate business for over 30 years, based out of Rockville, Maryland. We've done about $8 billion in value in terms of life science real estate. And in Philadelphia, we established the office here in June. It is a fabulous place to be for the life sciences in terms of growth and just progress for the country. So glad to be here and part of this wonderful panel.
Thank you, Lisa. And we have Chris DiPaolo. He is the president and founder of Protex, Inc. Chris.
Yes, nice to meet you all. Chris DiPaolo, president CEO of Protex. My wife would say she's probably very happy I'm not duplicating because the world can't take 2 of me, so that's a good thing. I'm glad it's better than Steve. But I have over 30 years experience working and assisting life science companies with everything from site selection to design, construction, commissioning, and validation. Protex has 5 offices. We work nationwide, 33 states, with startup and incubator type companies all the way through Fortune 500 companies. And then in addition, we have approximately 200,000 square feet. We're also a landlord in the Philadelphia suburban market, where we have about 20 plus tenants that are doing all types of research, manufacturing, testing services. And so it really gives us a 360 view of the entire capital project from every aspect you could possibly think of. We really understand what it is to be a tenant, a landlord, and then designing and building, commissioning, and validating a facility. So happy to be here, happy to share whatever I can and get to educate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to introduce Brewer Kirshner, who is the CEO of Kirshner Office Furniture, and he's going to share a little bit about Kirshner and welcome all of you to the Fireside Chat. Brewer, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I
There
feel
you
like
go.
I'm David Niles. I mean, we, all kinds of technical difficulties. The dry run did not work as well as we wanted it to work. So I just want to thank you very much for all the people that are on the panelists here. Thank you for coming in and supporting Kirshner Office Furniture. Thank you very much for all the listeners. We appreciate you being here. As everyone knows, Kirshner Office Furniture, I'm a lot older than all of you, obviously. I've been 37, 38 years in the furniture business now. So again, Kirshner Office Furniture, second generation. We have 2 beautiful showrooms, one at the Boris building downtown, 4,100 square feet of beautiful Kimball furniture. And then right here in Camp Prussia, we have 10,000 square feet of Kimball and Global. And we appreciate all you listening. And I just want to say thank you very much. I'm gonna leave the screen here and let you guys go to your the good words you have coming up. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brewer. So now I am going to introduce our moderator for the afternoon, and he is the Senior Vice President of Business Development and Sales at Kirshner Office Furniture. David Niles, take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Bellamy. I really appreciate it. I am thrilled to be sitting in front of 6 great panelists. Kay, thank you for all your help, and also with the listeners. I'm going to kick it off with an initial question that I'm going to ask Steve, but I'm going to put him on the spot for a moment because I think it would be very interesting to hear the foundation of the life sciences here. And what Steve mentioned earlier is 25 portfolio companies in their research office receiving $47 million in funding. Steve, I'd love you to give it just a quick overview of BioStrategy Partners and what that is to the region, because what you have there really transcends into what comes to our market.
Sure. BioStrategy Partners, is an organization in which I was past president of BioStrategy Partners, which brings together multiple research institutions in the Philadelphia area: Temple, Wistar, Children's Hospital, Jefferson, Penn State, and it is really designed to see if we could build efficiency in the collaborative process for industry, for example. So BioStrategy Partners, in a sense, connects all of these research institutions, provides a one-stop shop for companies that can then enter into a quick development project that's then sponsored by industry partners. So you think of it as this one-to-many connector for a company where they get to source new technology at this regional footprint of an organization through one portal and go through a coordinated program of de-risking that technology together. Currently, Erica Swift leads that organization, and she's at Penn State.
Thank you. I think it's important for people to know that because there is a tremendous foundation here for startups. So, Steve, first question for you. What does the life sciences mean, and what does it encompass?
It can be quite broad, right? So at an academic level, this would cover the study of living organisms, whether microorganisms, plants, animals, humans. Traditionally, looking at biology as the core, but many other fields have now threaded into how we study living organisms, say bioengineering. So generally looking at overall improvement in the quality of life. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to go deeper into definition in terms of life sciences at an academic level, but I wanted to add some texture in terms of examples of innovation sprouting from life sciences research, specifically some happening at Temple. So for example, looking at a gene editing approach to eradicating viruses, this is a potential curative effect that excises large sections of viral DNA and eliminates viral escape and reproduction. This is currently happening at Temple University and is based in our Department of Neuroscience and Neurovirology. Out of cardiology, you're looking at a gene therapy approach directed to an identified genetic mutation that, if treated, can prevent progression of certain conditions in cardiovascular disease. This extends to some of the other fields, like I was mentioning, that have an important role in life sciences research, such as computer science, an expert guided system to help those with autism. So this becomes a tool that was developed at Temple to help integrate the many individuals that want to be helpful and coordinated in helping a student or a child, for example, progress along a track of therapy for autism. We have new catheter technology to treat clots by increasing blood flow, by expanding a basket-like device at the site of the clot while delivering medication directly to the clot. And last, again, directing towards digital health and how it weaves into life sciences, we've developed with researchers out of our pulmonology group, a digital health chronic disease management system that starts with chronic obstructive pulmonary disorders and managing those patients more effectively. And actually, they pivoted for a COVID-19 application as well. So it's a broad array of fields that are increasingly benefiting from cross-cutting research between the fields, producing even better solutions for patients.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I think Steve touched very strongly on the large molecule focus of what's going on down in his institutions and stuff. But I think life sciences landscape for Philadelphia really encompasses, the large pharmaceuticals, biotechnologies, med device. There's converging technologies and nanotechnology and microelectro machines, MEMS. You got, of course, your contract service organizations, CROs, CMOs, and of course your institutions and universities who are really becoming research, life science research organizations as well. So we're very fortunate, I think, in our region to have all these different types of companies and institutions, big and small, for both large and small molecule alike.
That's great. Chris, I'm going to give you the next one. Why is Philadelphia becoming one of the top cities for labs and life sciences? What incentives are we offering? Are there any urban versus suburban?
Well, I mean, Philadelphia, I think for a while now has been transitioning from the large pharma campuses like, Merck, GSK, Pfizer, Dow, to these smaller technology-focused companies and startups and emerging and mid-sized and innovative companies that are, really establishing themselves in either single-story flex buildings or multi-story buildings throughout the region. But ever since really Sparks back in 2013 came on the scene in Philadelphia, it's really put us on the map, and we've been gaining momentum progressively in the cell and gene therapy areas, and the changing of the amino acids that change the shape of proteins that have their therapeutic applications to produce drugs for antibody therapies, antiviral therapies, protease blocker therapies, drug booster, enzyme enhancers, CRISPR, CA9, and adenoviral vector gene therapy as well are really the future of the Philadelphia region, in my opinion. And I've been here 30 years working, and I really noticed in this first time that this region is really getting its own roots and recognition throughout the life sciences, being a real hub because of all the different type of organizations we have in this area, for sure. And if you look at it, the genomics industry projected by 2026 is going to be a $63 billion industry. Cell gene therapy, 11 billion. Gene editing, 10 billion. So it really is going to be a lot more ahead of us because we're only fractions of that now.
That's great. Lisa? Any thoughts?
What I was just going to say was, oh, was it a separate question? I'm sorry.
Nope, no.
What I was just going to say was going back to what the real Steve Nappy sort of said. Philadelphia is unique in that while we are a large city, we are really a small town. And I think one of the things which is coming out of the life sciences is the alliances that are being formed between those which are, in the lab, to the universities, to the folks who are talking to the workforces. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure here that can assist from all different angles to just help this, help the life sciences grow in the city. And it's a great place to be right now.
Yep. Steve, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, Chris, I want to just jump in on the research hub aspect of it. And I think it's really impressive when you unpack it quickly in terms of quick numbers. And I pulled numbers for data that was available to me from Autumn, and it involves Penn, Wistar, Temple, CHOP, Drexel. If you look at the combined total of research just in 2019 from those institutions, you're looking at $2 billion. $2 billion across these institutions in research as your base. 673 discoveries, 379 new patents filed, 27 new startups. Now you start to look at what may actually be maturing today, happened, say, in the past 4 or 5 years. So if you look at the past 4 years, you're looking at 6.8 billion in research over that period, close to 3,500 inventions, over 1,400 patents filed, and 115 startups. So that gives you a sense of pipeline into the hub coming out of the institutions. And Lisa, I agree. I think what's nice is we are a powerhouse research hub, and we are still very collaborative as a region.
If you had to take those numbers and convert them into square footage, we're tracking right now over 2 million square feet of potential deals in the market. And that's today, for the next 18 months, just to convert that.
And we're going to get to the question of what do we do with those, right? Where are the facilities? Steve, as a follow-on to that, to the Autumn report, with the life sciences industry on the rise, will this attract more students to the fields of biochemistry, biotechnology, et cetera?
Absolutely. So research as a strength helps draw students, top quality students into the university, that are interested in working with professors that are leaders in their field and so on. So relevant to this conversation, it has allowed us, for example, to also develop programs geared towards translating research. One example is the professional master's program in bioinnovation. We have a professional master's in biotechnology, even one in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity applies pretty much to all businesses right now, right? We're reaching customers and other businesses virtually. So a lot of technology has had to come into play very quick for a lot of businesses. But these programs take that classroom work and combine it with strategies that are more applied towards, say, the discovery, commercialization, and business aspects of what they're learning when it comes to some of the research ongoing at the university and that they may be involved in. So absolutely.
That's great. Good. Thank you. Lisa, hotspots, area, size, location.
Yep. So hotspots, generally one would think about the clusters which are surrounding universities, clearly University City, where you have Penn, CHOP, Wistar, the Science Center, Drexel, you have that cluster there. The old, the 202 corridor where you had the old pharma. I mean, Carl can speak to some of the, the projects out there. And then you have, clusters which have been developing over time. So we've got, stuff out with, Discovery Labs, and, Chris has some projects out in the King of Prussia area. We have up in Doylestown, there are, incubators up there, but some of the most interesting there are two things which are happening in Center City right now. One, which is you're probably seeing a bit more of the manufacturing go out of town, in the suburbs, just because of the requirement for the high ceilings. But in the city, with what happened with COVID and with the amount of office space which is available, you're seeing Center City buildings looking at conversions. And so, for instance, we have the Curtis. It was it's 1 million square feet. We took 3 floors there. That building happens to be, it was built for printing presses, and it has a lot of the infrastructure that one needs to support life sciences. It has fresh air intakes and live loads of 200 plus per square foot. It has shaft space. And so and ceiling heights. So there are several buildings and owners, I think that, Chris can, speak to this as well, where you're going to see some growth in Center City in terms of other opportunities. And, we believe that with 2 million square feet plus on the market, that everybody can be happy. Everyone, there's enough space for everybody, and there are enough deals out there. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. And so, Chris, more on the adaptive reuse. I mean, you're seeing that in the city, as she mentioned, with the Curtis Center. MRA's done an extraordinary job in Springhouse, which not necessarily adaptive reuse, but what's the vacancy rate for?
Yeah, the vacancy rate right now is like 2% in the overall market, and that really includes even the GSK property that has space available, and that's not fully occupied at this point too, which has been taken over. But yeah, I agree with Lisa. There's definitely downtown. We're seeing, because of the downturn for retail and offices, the landlords are not traditionally centric landlords. Are looking to adaptively reuse, and they have some buildings down there that have really good bones about them because they've been built back in the early 1900s, and they're set up for anything from that standpoint. And we're actually working on 2 other ones, and then Lisa mentioned, of course. But we see, more of the less mature companies want to be downtown. The startups, and then to define it, incubator-based companies. There's incubators, there's accelerators, there's innovation centers, and there's some definitions to that. But they're really doing that proof of concept work, and they're working on shoestring budgets and trying to utilize university students and PhD students for them to get their masters and not have to pay them. That's where you're seeing, I think, a large push based on what Steve talked about for the institutions and different healthcare research organizations that are in the city that are really pushing out technologies. And they're usually 1 to 3 base people, but they have all shared equipment, shared labs, shared office space, and then they evolve to then maybe they get some sort of proof of concept technology, and they're getting another grant and continuing and getting some dedicated lab space in some of these centers. But at some point they're going to grow out of them and get a licensing deal, and therefore they're looking for their own space to habitat, and that's when they really get to that innovation center space where they want their dedicated lab and office, their own equipment, but they'll share all common amenities of a building with regard to conference room, break rooms, loading dock, bathrooms, and they still get some collaborative feel by bumping into other tenants in a place. And I've seen it in my buildings where they sit on each other's boards and they share equipment, they have equipment, they do different testing for each other. So it's really a great environment. But yeah, the suburban market, I think, then people push out because that's where they're getting more developed. They have a management team, and most of the management team usually lives in the suburbs. So I think in real estate, we all know, right? Usually a location is always within 5 miles of a CEO's house where they're going to locate. I've always found that to be 98% true. So anyway, yeah, I think that the whole region is going to benefit from this for sure.
That's great. I'm gonna pivot here with another question. I'm gonna direct to Carl because it looks like he's getting bored. For someone who is looking to lease space in this arena, and we specifically think of adaptive reuse on this, what needs to be considered? And I just remembered another building. I know CB's got it. 401 North Broad, right? A data hub, and now they're doing labs in those types of buildings also. what needs to be considered when somebody's looking at a building for lab space?
Yeah, so, as everyone's been talking about so far, there's a lot of different kinds of science and technology that's being developed right now. And if you're going to go out and look for a building, you really need to understand what the science is that you're doing. You want to develop a program, which is kind of a summary of the space and the types of spaces that you need. You need to figure out, and Chris kind of identified, the startups are kind of more in the city, but a lot of the companies that are a little more established are out in the suburbs. But when you're looking for a building, you need to be thinking about zoning. Does the building that you're looking at, especially in adaptive reuse, if they're trying to change from an office to a lab, for example, does the zoning allow that? Parking is an issue. A lot of these suburban office parks that were built, especially like in Great Valley, they're designed as kind of flex warehouse buildings, and the lab companies require more parking than you would for a warehouse building. We saw that especially back in the 80s with companies where they were parking down the street, and townships have got a lot more they're more savvy to that. Things you need to think about are access for deliveries. Science companies, you have gas cylinders that are getting delivered, special lab equipment, so you need loading docks that'll work for that. And also the types of science you're doing has code implications on the building. Chemistry labs have different requirements than biology labs. You're working with hazardous materials. One thing to think about hazardous materials is as you go higher up in the building, you can have, less hazardous materials because of what the codes dictate. Also need to kind of look at the construction classification, the type of structural framing you have. Lisa mentioned floor-to-floor heights. That's important. You have a lot of infrastructure with these facilities for mechanical systems, electrical systems, plumbing systems, which are much higher than what you'd have in a typical office building. So you just need to be aware of that as you're looking out in the market. And what we like to do with clients is basically help them develop a program and identify all that infrastructure so that when they're doing the search, they actually have kind of a work letter or basic design so that they're not looking at buildings that aren't going to make sense for them. You want to make sure that you're focused on what you need specifically.
Right. Lisa?
Yeah, I was just going to say you definitely need to think about expansion capabilities. A lot of these companies seem to go from maybe one or two bench tops, in the lab, and then they go from it's not a linear growth. They go from 1 to 2 bench tops, then they may go to 4 to 8, and then which could be anywhere from, let's say, 3,000 to 6,000 square feet. And then it starts to just shoot out from there. I mean, so, they could go to 30,000, they could go to 60,000, they could go needing, 90,000. So, to Carl's point, you have to make sure that the zoning is there if they have research, if they need office, if they want to do vivarium, if they want to be able to do manufacturing all within the same location. It's really important to just sit down with your architect real early on and think it through. Think through your financing, because a lot of the growth is really tied to the financing. It's not like a law firm where the lease expires and they need to make a decision. I mean, it's about the science and it's about the funding, with these companies.
Yeah, a lot of the cost in these projects is not what you see when you're down in the lab. It's really actually what's happening above the ceiling. And when we program with companies, we'll kind of actually start working with org charts, and then just try and project out about 5 years, which is tough to do, especially for a startup. But you can kind of project, the types of spaces you need, the types of labs you need, what you need kind of as a starting point, but also what you need 5 years out, and you want to plan for that. And if you're going into a multi-tenant building, we usually plan the space so that they could actually grow into an adjacent tenant area. So you don't want to kind of dead end them, with your layouts so that they don't have the ability to expand within a building.
Agreed.
One of the
So-
things that we did, just to add to that, one of the things that we've been able to do is, if it, you know, actually down at Curtis, but is to be able to take some of these smaller companies and basically say to them, look, if you're going to grow more than 50% in the next 18 months, that will, you know, I'm sure the landlords don't want to hear this, but will, you know, sort of rip up their lease and and move and rebuild out, you know, out their space for them. So it's important that they feel comfortable and that they know that they have a solid base to grow from.
So that's kind of, you're starting to answer the follow-on question, which was, how does someone go about figuring out how much and what type of space they need, knowing that what you said, it could be hockey stick growth, it could be 2 to 4 benches to 8 to 10 or more. Much of that will be predicated on next round of funding or financing. How do they go about that process?
You're asking.
I'm sorry, Lisa.
They have to sit down and really think it through with. They have to put together their entire team. It's really important, especially with these young companies, to have a really strong team. Someone who understands the, you know, who is looking at the science, someone who is looking at the facilities. You know, you have to have, you know, your attorneys, your architects, your financiers, your engineers, brokers help as well, you know, to be able to provide, you know, options, to be able to show them, which is what we do, show them what their, you know, options could look like. You know, but it's really, it's, you know, when it comes down to it, it's all about the science. I mean, are they going to be just doing R&D and research, or do they want to, you know, do they want to create a facility where they can do both manufacturing, or are they going to, you know, or if the science is successful, are they then going to just, are they going to, you know, send it off to a CMO or a CRO, CDMO? You know,
Right.
that those are decisions that have to be made, you know, fairly early on to decide what the trajectory is of the company. You know, we've got this new project where a company can actually go from bench to manufacturing, which anyone who wants to chat later, you know, this is going to be downtown, will probably be, it's about 180,000 square feet, and it's going to be, and it's both office as well as research space and the ability for CGMP. And it's an exciting project where someone can go from the bench to probably phase 2, phase 3, potentially, and not have to leave the building.
That's great.
Not have to, yeah, we're excited.
Chris, I know you have a follow-on on this one, but I want to ask you a question because we're throwing around a lot of acronyms. All right. And so can you, with regards to space, because it does fit with Linda, what Lisa said regarding it depends on whether they're going to do their own in-house work or sub it out. Difference between a CMO and a CRO, and some examples of what we have, like an Iovance or a Wuxi or something like that. Like, where do they fit? And are they a draw to the region as well?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things the Philadelphia region has is the talent. We have so much talent that knows how to do this type of work and work in these type of facilities and research oriented. That's really the biggest draw to the Philadelphia region. And yeah, I think it fits across small companies. And then Iovance is just finishing up a major 140,000 square foot facility at the Navy Yard for their own products. And Wushi's now Iovance is doing their own technologies to a great extent, but Wuxi is definitely a contract manufacturing and research organization. They do both of those things. In fact, we were involved with them when they first went to the Navy Yard back in the early 2000s and designed and built a facility for them. So yeah, know them well, but that is a critical point of this market because these companies are limited finances and their investors do not want them to spend money on sticks and bricks whenever possible. So they're always looking to outsource services that they can buy through others, which is hugely important. And we have a lot in this region to do so. I definitely agree with Carl too, with regard to the need to really do some preliminary master planning and understand the project parameters, because the business horizon, a lot of people's business horizon might be just to start a company, get the technology, and then sell it right? In 2-3 years. So when you're designing and building a facility, why would you put in central boilers, chillers, and things of that nature if they're 20-year systems that you only need 3 to 5 year systems based on your lease or business horizon? So it really does have to, you have to go to match up what your overall goals are. And then there's many ways to skin that cat to build your facility.
Thank you. I'm going to give you the follow-on. What are the different approaches to designing and constructing lab spaces? Design, bid, build, construction manager at risk, et cetera.
Yeah. So it's been my experience to my career that almost every company does not allow enough time for the process from start to finish. They come out to the market thinking there's, like we said, 2% vacancy in the market, but they want ready to go lab space and move in 2 months. When you take into consideration the time it takes to do some preliminary master planning, then it could be a much more efficient process that way, right? Do that preliminary master planning, hand it off to brokers like Lisa in the market, and they have a very defined square footage and ceiling height and electrical capacity and gas capacity and water capacity and sanitary, all those good things. Makes it a much more efficient process, but still, then you have to test fit them and then do individual estimates for each of those facilities, and then combine that with the leasing terms and TI and the leasing rate, and then you hopefully get lawyers involved, and that takes months, and then you sign a lease, and then you got to design it, then you got to permit it, then you got to build it, then you got to commission it, then you got to validate it, and then you can start operating. So, one big advice I would say, please. It's never too early to start. It's never too early to have at least a plan, a book plan. Like we work with companies like Carl's all the time in a collaborative design build approach. We bring in architects and engineers, and we get that plan together, because that could sit there on your bookshelf for a little while until you're ready. But at least you got it. You have a cost structure, because getting that budget and understanding all your parameters is key. But so based on that, they're always crunched for time. And our preferred method of delivery projects is design build, and design build is the fastest method to deliver projects. So it allows you to design it and order long lead equipment and do some demo work and roughen things and do things ahead of you would normally do then when you do design bid build. But you really got to understand the costs. I think the budget that they want to spend at the end of the day, because like I said, there's trade-offs, right? You could have operating costs versus first costs. So very energy inefficient systems versus very energy efficient systems. But if your business horizon, like I said, is 3 or 5 years, that's not a big issue for you, but it does have a huge impact on what your capital cost structure will be. So we actually have a patented target costing approach that we design to the number. That's key, to find people who can design to the right number, because at the end of the day, it's got to perform, it's got to conform, it's got to comply. But you can have a variance in cost outcomes based on that approach. So that may or may break or kill a job just based on the cost. So we've been able to be consistent with our clients. But one of the other big differences between design bid build and design build, outside of the speed component, is design bid build. There's a lot of times clients coming out of these universities and out of companies that really don't have a lot of experience in managing and project managing firms and groups are now the center of communication, where they're trying to coordinate with the architect, the engineer, the brokers, the landlord, the C&Q people, and they don't have the experience to do that. So things will fall through the cracks, and things will get missed. And not saying it's anyone's fault from the professional side, but it's just not communicated, or it wasn't communicated from one person but never transferred to the other. So it doesn't hit the drawings. Therefore, then the builders come and they bid the job, and then it's not in the drawing. They're not going to price it. And then when you needed it, at the end of the day, if you needed a vacuum pump or you needed an air compressor that wasn't on there or something of that nature, or some kind of autoclave infrastructure utility system, that's a change order. That's cost structure. Whereas design build, you give the design builder a performance specification. I need this temperature, this humidity, this purity of water. I owe it to you. I owe you that performance no matter what the drawings say. So you told me what you need, I have to deliver it, and for the cost structure that we hopefully agreed to. So that's a big difference, is the standard of care, performance guarantee, performance spec guarantee versus drawing spec guarantee. Very different delivery methods. It gives you a little more comfort, I think, but gives you, I think, greater horsepower having all the players on the same page and no one pointing fingers and working together as a team. So that's been our approach. But
efficiency is the name of the game, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Carl, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I think to just to back up a little bit, kind of the differences between design bid build, and kind of a CM approach is in the design bid build, you have three entities. You have the owner, you have the architect, and you have the contractor. Um, and you know, basically each the owner and the architect, the owner, the contractor are contracted to the owner. In design build, basically the designer, well, the designer could be the lead, you know, or the contractor could be the lead. We've done design build. We've never been the lead on as a design build project. We contract through the contractor. And in that scenario, basically the owner contracts to the design build contractor. Then you have the construction management approach where the architect contracts to the owner, the construction manager contracts to the owner, but the construction manager is involved in the process earlier on. And that's the way I like to work that approach or design build, because I like construction companies' input during the design, because they're the ones that are building the project and they bring a lot of value to the design process, especially in these complicated projects, because you know, small decisions can have a huge impact on cost. And you know, I definitely value, you know, having the contractor involved during the design process. And it also, by having that involvement, I think it does, you know, it's a faster process if you need to build quicker than going design bid build, because you have to go through the entire design process. You have to bid it, then you have to permit it, then you have to, you know, build it. With the other scenarios, you can start to fast track the project. And we did a 60,000 square foot pilot plant for a company design. It was a CM approach, but we actually bought it through validation in 3 years. So it was a pretty quick project. And you know, we had to take that, it was a new building. We had to take it through land development. There were some zoning issues with the site. So it was just a good way to kind of get everyone on board early and, you know, bring the project in, you know, frankly, on time and under budget.
So I just got to throw out there from the office component, from start to finish, it was 3 years. That seems like a really long time, but obviously what you're talking about is from ground up. That's
Yeah, this is ground up. Yeah, there were actually some environmental issues on the site that we had to deal with. And yeah, and that took it through validation as well. So we were, you know, we did a foundations and steel package, we did a shell package, then we did an interiors package, and you know, basically we were able to get the project done a lot quicker.
That's great.
Yeah,
So
I'll give you an example. We're doing a design build project for a manufacturing facility about 156,000 square feet out of the ground, and we're going to do that in about 18 months. So to give you an idea how speed for design build can be, 18 months versus 3 years. Yeah.
it still seems like a long time from the office perspective. Hate to say it. So Carl, a follow on for you. How will open space look like in labs today with COVID? What is the trend in design to keep people safe? Will sharing spaces, equipment become obsolete, or is that something that it will be around to stay, do you think?
So, I mean, we're working with a lot of companies right now. They're dealing with COVID. You know, basically what we're seeing a lot of, frankly, especially with people working from home, is, you know, the office people are at home, but the lab people have to be in the lab. A lot of things that are being done in the buildings to address COVID are really being done more in the office space with furniture, trying to create separation. You know, the trend had been very open office environments, trying to encourage collaboration, which you still want to do, but you know, you need to create the physical separation. We are actually working in some labs where we're starting to spread like biosafety cabinets out. You know, we used to have them kind of lined up fairly closely in some of the labs, and we're spreading them out now because it's movable equipment and it's easy to do. We also had some clients going to double shifts just so that they can, you know, spread out or reduce the number of people that are actually in the buildings. You know, I think as far as equipment, some of the smaller equipment can be user centric, but you know, larger equipment, because of the cost and the fact that it needs to be shared, it will continue to be shared.
That's great. Lisa, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that a lot of people just don't know post-COVID what office space is really going to look like. I mean, we hear that all the time. To Carl's point, the lab is not, the people who have to be in the lab have to be in the lab. That's not going away. The question is, how many people will be coming back to the office? I mean, we have different, there's a site about 60,000 square feet. Someone brought us in who, and he's, I guess he's an R&D company, and they have, I can't tell you how many people are in there, but probably about 20,000 square feet of just of offices. And he said, we just don't know. Can you, if we don't need it, can you sublease it for us? So it's a tough question. I mean, a lot of people, it's a lifestyle change, it seems to be. A lot more people are, who don't have to be in the office aren't coming in, but I'm hearing a lot of the law firms are trying to get everybody back into the offices. There is definitely, I think, a need just even from a mental aspect amongst a lot, and a camaraderie and partnership and teams. I think there's an importance to getting people back into the offices. So, yeah, it's a hard one.
It's got to be a challenge in the context of offices. A lot are going to be more modular. There's going to be more availability for a kit of parts to move things around, right?
Yeah.
And I always heard in the past that maybe over in Europe and the West Coast worked more with modular labs. And I'm wondering if we're still doing stick built, or if there's still, or there's a component for modular labs today, because to your point, that may have a better impact, or nicer impact, softer impact for social distancing in a lab if that's required. Chris, what are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing the lab, having hazardous chemicals, and if you have 100% outside air and hoods, you can't do that in your garage or your basement. Your wife would shoot you, I guess, at the end of the day. So, yeah, the lab space has been very active. I mean, I got to tell you, our facilities through this COVID, we've seen such a need for more lab space throughout this whole period of COVID, based on testing companies, research companies, cryo storage companies, all kinds. Yeah, the office, I mean, I think they're a very educated group of people, so they understand the risks with COVID. They work with it, some of them, and some of them are very knowledgeable in the area, so they understand it, and they're not. I don't see that concern, because I mean, we're definitely, all the protocols are being followed throughout these buildings and their facilities and their offices and their labs and sanitization. But I think researchers love to do research at the end of the day, and when you say office space, usually there's a good percentage of the researchers have office space too, so they have to be there anyway. Yeah, I think there's going to be more distancing and social distancing as needed, but hopefully, we're past the crux of this thing, and that's going to, not be as important in 6 months from now, I hope.
I just want to.
Can we ask you a question?
Can I jump in with a question real quick?
Yeah.
So this question could be answered, and it's two parts. And I think one is directed to Steve, and the other can be directed to any of you. They're talking about malls. So with a lot of anchor stores closing in malls, what is the buzz surrounding turning those spaces into medical and lab spaces? And the same thing with the school, Steve, on the campus. Will some of your spaces there get, with the growing number of students majoring in biotech and biochemistry, will you guys revamp some of those spaces to accommodate?
I can respond to that. I don't know about the school side, but certainly the retail side. We've had several inquiries from mall owners, shopping center owners, in terms of their large boxes, which have closed down, whether or not those sites could be life sciences. I think they're also looking at, in terms of whether it could be medical, not necessarily life sciences. I think one of the things which will definitely come into play is going to be zoning, whether or not they have, and I think Carl can respond to that, whether or not they have the appropriate zoning. But it's certainly something, a lot of the mall owners I'm not going to say where, but they're definitely looking at it, whether or not it's an option.
Let's take Lord and Taylor out here, and they
Yeah,
can
I mean,
get
malls,
right? Going to office.
Yeah. And
Well, I
usually
think that's
more
apartments, I heard.
commercial.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, malls are used in commercial zoning districts, and laboratories and production facilities are more in industrial zoning districts. So it would be something that clearly would have to be investigated if you're looking at trying to convert, a mall to something more life science or pharmaceutical based.
Usually the infrastructure of those facilities are not very robust, and then you can't do manufacturing because you need dedicated loading docks, entrances, things of that nature. It just doesn't work. We've seen that in other places trying to do that. It's just not CG. You can't get the CGMP compliance requirements in those type of environments that are shared. So anyway, but it'd be tough. I think.
Yeah, Steve, for you, what are you seeing on the campus?
So Steve, from the education side.
And I'm not tapped in to be able to really comment on any university plans in this regard, but I would imagine some of the change challenges apply, which being part of a design process right now for a facility on campus, a lot of that infrastructure needs to be thought through from the beginning for some of the labs that are on campus. And then feeding those labs, whether it's HVAC or some of the gas lines that need to come in. So yeah, I don't know that it's an easy conversion of classroom space to lab.
Right.
We actually have a client who took and this is not in this market, but another one took a Sam's Club. Now that was in a little different, a different neighborhood, but they converted that into a CGMP facility, but it was not in a retail area itself. Cool conversion, but
Yeah.
I'm showing my age. The word cool. Yeah.
Yeah, there you are.
That's funny, Lisa.
All right.
So, David, we have time for one or two more questions.
Sure. Yep. Do you have any coming in from our listeners, or I can ask another one? But Chris was kind of working towards it on a lab versus office. Like, what's the ratio? But it sounds like there's a lot of variables to that. Go ahead.
There is. I would say on average, a 60% office to 40% lab, and then it depends on what type of operations they're doing and the type of support spaces they need, whether they need, wash areas, DI water system, or just point of use system. So you have to have some more mechanical rooms and support areas, autoclaves, gas rooms, bulk gas. So there's different nuances to how much then you say is really lab, right, with the support areas at pure to just office. So it really depends, but normally 60-40 is the ratio we see, 60 lab, 40 office.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. That's us. That's all. That's what we have for questions today.
And did we answer the question about the lab furniture meeting the same needs as, material wise? Did we tap into that? Because that was a question that was on there.
Yeah, we'll take that to Carl.
Yeah, I guess the question was whether life science commercial is the same as healthcare, or life science furniture is the same as healthcare. I mean, we typically, in healthcare, we typically see plastic laminate in patient areas, but we've done labs in healthcare environments where you're really looking more at metal casework and, epoxy tops. It really depends on, the science that they're doing in the labs. Life science, science and technology, you're really, again, with the science, we typically see metal casework, epoxy tops. You need to be concerned about chemical resistance, in certain areas, especially in clean rooms and GMP areas. We see a lot of stainless steel, and you're not getting into anything fixed. Everything wants to be movable because you have to, be able to clean it and then clean the space that it's in. So, the other thing with especially in clean rooms and manufacturing spaces, you need to be concerned about the cleaning materials that they use because they're very corrosive. So the materials need to be able to withstand heavy corrosive bleaches and materials like that to keep them from frankly corroding.
David, can I ask you a question in terms of timeline for Kirshner? Can you maybe talk about the timeline? We have different groups that are looking at spaces, and in terms of turnaround time and when to bring you guys in to take a look at the space and to figure out exactly, what they would need and what the turnaround time would be for lab furniture.
Yeah, I would say most of the time, from at least my experience on it and doing some of the life science work in the past, to Carl's point, it's mostly knee holes, right, in the lab space. So we're talking really about task seating. Or it could be a sit-to-stand chair or something like that that's going to go on top of a stainless steel bench or next to it, rather. I'm going to go back to what Chris said earlier, which is the longer the lead time, the better. Right? I mean, that is always good. And I know for furniture, in a lot of cases, it's a thing that's thought of last. And a lot of manufacturers still manufacture furniture to order. So depending on the product line, it could be a 5 to 6 week lead time. And that does not necessarily work for somebody that's on a quick path, although it takes time to build out labs. So I know Brewer just turned his camera back on, so I'm sure he's got something to offer.
I definitely have an answer to that. So it's, again, I love David's answer that the more time, the better, but lab design over in Burlington manufactures in 6 weeks, and Former Space is on about a 14 or 12 or 14 week production. So it all really depends on the top. The base of it's pretty easy, but the sooner you can partner with somebody like us, the better off you're going to be in time wise and design and everything.
And I'll just throw in there just.
Did I say that? Partner with us? I think I said.
Just say that,
Nice segue, Brewer. Nice segue.
So
based on our experience in construction, I can tell you the lead times on certain materials, steel, different types of HEPA filters and other things are going way out these days. So definitely plan ahead as much as you can, because there's a great demand in the market for construction materials right now. So we're seeing impacts across the board, across the country for that. So I'm sure if you guys have steel in your furniture, I'm sure it's going to impact you too. So anything with steel, yeah.
Everybody had a price increase in the last 30 days. Everybody.
Yeah.
So, but it's 4 o'clock right now. So I'd like to first thank everybody very much for listening in, and the panelists for being here. We thank you very, very much. We have another 5 minutes if you guys want to, anyone to comments, any final comments from anyone? Again, we really appreciate it.
I would just say one thing, that at the heart of all this, again, of life sciences and all these discoveries, are the patients that are at the other end that are waiting for the clinical trials, and that having enough lead time so that you're not losing these patients that have been lined up is extremely important. So again, just planning on the front end to be able to, make this as smooth a transition as these companies grow is really important.
I've heard that on 2 or 3 jobs, saying we need to get it done every week. We can get there. We can help 22 more people, or save 22 lives, or 2 lives. And so we really want to move in and get moving and shaking. And I know that a couple people are doing spec labs right now, just so that people can move and shake quicker, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, we're doing that at our Fort Valley Square building, and we have space in others. We're doing some spec labs, and we're happy to help anyone that needs space, or either our buildings or elsewhere. We can help you throughout the country. So,
Curtis, we've got 20,000 square feet of spec labs that we're doing down. I guess they're anywhere from 4 to 8 bench. So thank you for that shameless plug. Yep.
I can't be the only one shamelessly plugging away. I need other people. Carl, give us a plug, Carl. What do you got to say? You can design in 2 weeks, right, Carl? Why have you moved in no time?
We love doing this work because we know we're helping people, actually. I mean, that's why we really like being in this industry, frankly. Plus, it's been a great industry to be in the Philadelphia area. We started the business in 1987, and it's pretty much carried us through every recession we've had. So it's a good place to be.
That's great. Steve, you got the last word. The real Steve Nappy.
No, it's, I think seeing innovation happen from its raw form, and Lisa, to your point about it ultimately getting to patients, a key to that is really partnerships with every industry along the way for us. And we can't wait to get back to creating those collision zones to be able to network and make sure that we're having these conversations early on and thinking about these types of topics at the early stages of business formation. So we appreciate the invitation. We certainly benefit from the conversation as early as possible.
Well, again, thank you, everybody. We appreciate y'all being here. and everyone listening. So from Kirshner Office Furniture, we'll call it a wrap. And thank you again for everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, very much.